So we're going to begin our journey to replace our Blackboard banners. Where else? In our course. So the homepage banner we can't change unless we talk with CIL and get permission to do that or have them do that. Most likely they'll want to do that themselves because it's locked. So we're going to start with week 1, and we want to click on week 1. And as soon as week 1 renders, then we want to go to the top of the item where our banner is, click our edit drop down, as everyone's very familiar doing, click edit, and a couple things that we want to look for as we get into this edit. First thing is the HTML button there. We want to click on the HTML, and up pops the HTML, and there's two things that we really want to look at in here. We want to look at the URL where the image is saved, and most importantly also we want to look at the height and the width of the banner. In our COM courses they're all the same height and width. They were just stock for every single course that we have, some 23, 25 courses. So they're probably stock in yours, but it's good to check just to be sure. And then write down the height and the width. The width especially is important. Okay, so now we're going to create the banner template and create a frame for the banners and layers for the different elements of the banners. So one of the first things that we want to do is we want to start a new file. And as you see, this comes in here, and don't worry about filling in the template. We're just going to make our own deal. The width is very important here. We want to get down the width that we listed before, so 1670 pixels. And then from there we also want to change that 400 to 450. So now we've got our image size set correctly. We want to click on these advanced items. Make sure our resolution's set to 72. We don't need higher than that because this is all going to be displayed on the web. And then press OK. So now you see our frame come up, and we have the right pixels width-wise and height-wise. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to Windows up here, and at the very bottom I'm going to make sure single window mode is checked. If it's not checked, I'm going to check it. From there I'm going to go over to change one key thing in the preferences. I'm going to go to the Edit menu. I'm going to go down to Preferences, click Preferences. Preferences will come up. I'm going to click Tool Options. The very bottom there's a thing called a Move tool. Default it's set off. I want to check that and set the layer as a path. And then I'm going to click OK. So the windows having it as single windows is going to make it a little bit easier for us to work with the tools and the stuff like that. Speaking of tools, I see a little different tool that I want is selected right now. So I'm going to go in the upper left hand corner. This square box is the selection tool, and I'm going to select that to start. Okay, so now I'm almost ready to go. So I'm going to start building this template. So the first thing I'm going to do then, I'm going to go over to my layers box over here, and on the left hand side a little white page, create a new layer, and I am going to create one layer and it'll come up automatically. I want the transparency, everything's in there, so I'm going to click OK, OK, and I'm going to create a total of 6 layers. Okay, then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name of these. I'm going to leave the background. So I only have 4 layers above that, so I'm going to create another layer. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 6 layers total, which is good. So I'm going to leave that background layer for now. We'll probably delete it in the end. Next thing I'm going to do is click on these, and I'm going to name W1 for the week 1 photo. I'm going to do number week 2 for the week 2 photo, week 3 for the week 3 photo, week 4 for the week 4 photo, and then in the other 2 layers I'm going to make these for my graphics in here. So I'm going to call those frames though, because they're going to frame some text. So I'm going to go frame, 1, and I'm going to go frame 2. Okay, so now I'm going to go over, I'm going to go File, and I'm going to save. I guess it's the first time I'm saving it, so I'm going to save it as. I'm going to leave it an XCF document, and I'm going to call this new BB banners. Alright, so I look at my folder where it's going to be saved. It's not where I want to have it saved, so I'm going to go through my file menu on the left, here to the Mac on the right, into the dossier file, into the Spring Symposium file, and that's going to be a good place to put it. So I'll leave it in there. And down in the right hand corner I'm going to hit save. Okay, so now I've set up my template, and from here I have to start creating assets. The next task at hand is to start creating the weekly banner photos. So I'm going to go, I have some photos selected from the city of Portland, some photos that I took when I was up there at a conference, and I'm going to open some of them up. And first thing I'm going to do is find where I'm at. I'm in the wrong folder right there. I'm going to have to go a couple up, get into the photo folder, and I have these named now. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my Skyline River photo. You can just double click it and it'll open right up. Now if I go into the image and I go down to the image and I look at scale image, so now this starts telling me what the file size here is. So now I see I have a much larger photo, which is great. You want to take larger photos because you can shrink things down without much loss of quality, but if you have to make it larger, well, then you're going to lose a lot of quality. Well, you can see my resolution's 300, so the first thing that I have to do is change my resolution to 72. I'm going to do that, and if you set it in one box then click in the other one will automatically adjust. Now remember I said we wanted that width, and we want that 1670 width, and that's what the banners have been done with, so we're going to keep that. And I click in the other one, and now this one I'm just going to leave the corresponding height. If I put in a different height, it may mess up the aspect ratio of the picture, and the height we're going to deal with in a little bit of a different way by using our template. So now I'm going to click scale, and it's going to change it a little bit. I go down here to the bottom right. Right now it's 25%. I can increase it to 50%, so I have a pretty good photo to work on. Now's the time to do any image manipulation that you want. Because this is a photo directly into the sun, it's a little bit backlit. So I'm going to go into the image and actually into the colors, and I'm going to work with a thing called levels. Levels is always the first color correction tool you should go to. It comes up on the other side over here. I'll pull it in so you can see the levels. You can see it actually is lacking a little darkness. Whenever there's a flat spot in here, that's an area that could potentially be corrected. But it's going to be a little different with this photo because it's a backlit photo. So I'm going to start over here on the right by increasing the lightness for the photo. So I'm going to increase it a little bit. If I increase it too much, you can see that I lose the clouds and it doesn't look very good. And the darkness is one of the kind of cool things. So I'm going to just the tiniest bit move it, not much. Now the center one will work much better for me. I can move that and I can get some of the center tones. The thing I have to be careful of is that I don't go way too light and then I have a goofy looking photo. So I want to keep it, it started at 1, and if I go to maybe 14 or 15 there, 1.15, I think I'll come up pretty good. I can even try again now with the darkness and see if that makes things any worse. Give it just a tiny bit, maybe halfway there. Give it a touch so it has good contrast. You can see in here that the green comes out now a little bit better, and there's always a preview button somewhere on these, so I can see the difference in terms of when I click the preview. I can see how it's darker in there, and the blue also. So that's going to be okay for now, so I'm going to click OK. So now I've got the photo and it's ready to go in. I don't want to make any more image changes at this particular point in time. So now I want to move this image over into my Blackboard Banners project. So I'm going to go in the upper left hand corner and see this tab up here. I'm going to click on Get My Template Back. So go back to here. So now on the photo I just manipulated, I want to go Control Shift A and select the whole thing. Then I'm going to go Control C to copy it. Then I'm going to click back over to my project with the banners, and I'm simply from there going to click on my week 1 level layer, and then I'm going to hit Control V, and you'll see that I will have the image in there, and you'll see up top that there's a floating selection up here. So now I can take this, and notice that it's not framed as well as I would really like to have it framed myself. So I'm going to go over here. First thing I'm going to do is to press Control Shift A to select all. Then I'm going to do Control C to copy. I'm going to go to the tab up here and go back to my banner project here. And then I'm going to go Control V. Click on my move tool, which is right over here, the cross, and then I'm going to click once in the middle of my photo, which I just did in the banner to be, and now I can use the cursor tools to align it and frame it better in the frame that I have. I kind of like having the sun there about the top third of the screen. It gives me just enough kind of clouds up there, a little reflection on the water. You can see the buildings and some of the boats in the water here. So I think that's a pretty good place to keep it, so I'm going to leave it there. Notice that it says on the far right in the palettes here, it says the floating selection there. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to go straight down underneath. There's something that looks like an anchor, and it's called Anchor the Floating Layer. So I'm going to click on that, and it should come right down to the week 1 now. So we see that there's a little eye to the left here which affects the visibility. I can turn that on and off like that. And our first week banner's ready. I'm going to move up and click on week 2. We're going to put one more banner in, and then the rest you'll know how to do, no problem. I'm going to open a second banner, and I'm going to do a little bit different thing with this particular banner so you can see just a little different technique in terms of cropping this particular banner, because it's not going to be exactly the right size. So I'm going to take my street food, I'm going to double click that, and I'm going to import it into a new file, another folder here. And we can see that we have an image here that's pretty good. I'm going to go to the colors. I'm going to check the levels. I think this one had the levels done and inadvertently saved already. I could probably do a little bit with it. The far right hand side, you can see it's very flat over here in this image, and I can pull it in a little bit here, and you can see it lighten up a little bit and get a little bit better. I think I'm going to go about that far with it. May want to try the center a little bit. I can even get a little bit more light if I go just a tiny bit. Looks pretty good with the 1 though. I'm going to check the right, see if I need to bring any darker or contrast. That doesn't really work for it. I think I have kind of an ideal thing. So I'll double check the preview. Kind of brought it out a little bit. Click OK. This one might even be able to use a little more saturation. If I was going to do that, I would go to colors, hue, saturation, and the saturation template looks a little bit like this here, and I could bump up the saturation just a little bit, maybe to a 5. I can check the preview, see what that looks like. It brings things out just a tiny bit more. So I'm going to click OK. So I've got a little bit more saturation. Now I've got a bunch of street here on the left hand side that I don't really need in the photo. I'm going to check the image size and just make sure that I have a lot of image there. So I have plenty of image to cut this down 4,500 and still to fit it into where I want to go. So what I'm going to do with this particular one though is I am going to make a selection here, and then I'm going to get up kind of outside of this little sign here, and I can tell up top, see how these little markers move to the rulers. So I'm going to set beside that, and I can see I want to be right about there at the top when I start. So I'm going to pull down a selection from there, bring it over. This white thing doesn't look very appealing at all, so I'm going to start right there. Make sure I have the whole picture in there, and pull that out a little bit more. Okay, so now I have a selection. Now I'm going to go and crop that down. All I do is go back up to the image menu, select crop to selection. You can see it crops the photo. The last thing I have to do before I import it is go back to the image menu again, scale the image. So I want to get it to 72 pixels. Click there. Now I'm 72 pixels. And remember, 1670 is the width that I want. I'm going to click in there, and that'll scale it appropriately. And I click scale. You'll see it shrink down. Now I'm going to go Control Shift A, select the whole thing, Control C to copy it. I'm going to go back to my original project, click on week 2 so I know that that's there, and I'm then from there going to hit Control V, and you'll see that I have the image show up there. Now once again, I want to kind of mess with the top bottom so I can get it centered exactly where I want to go. So I'm going to click on Move, click in the center of the photo, go to the up and down cursor keys, and move a little bit. So this time I'm kind of looking for getting some of the signs in there because they have a lot of color. This gentleman here that's in the middle, kind of having his face in the bottom third. Close to the top third, I have the signs up here, and you can see some of the people walking. So I like that particular positioning right now. Notice again it showed up as a floating selection. I'm going to click that so it's blue, and I'm going to click the anchor down here, and then it's going to show up as my week 2 photo. Again, the little eyes on the left hand side hide things, so when I want to see my week 1 photo, I click the eye and I unhide it. When I want to see the week 2 photo, I click the other eye. So these build when I would put in my week 3 and week 4 photos. I can do the same thing, and then when I go to export is the week 1 banner, I would have the week 1, the week 2, the week 3, and the week 4 blanked out, and then the week 1 would be the one that shows up when I export that particular file. The next thing I'm going to do is make some graphics that I can lay text on for the course name and the course number. I'm going to go up, make sure I have my selection box tool selected, and then I'm going to come down here and start over on the right hand side, and I'm going to make a box, and I'm going to make a very long box, and I'll explain why in another minute. But so I'm going to drop my box there. If you notice that I can put my cursor over it, and then you see a little different thing, I can click and raise the box just a little bit more if I want to have it a little bit larger for type, like that. So now I have a square selection. I'm going to do a couple other things to work with that. I am going to go over to the bucket tool on the left here. I'm going to look at the things that I have there. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a black base that I'm going to have, and you'll see why in a little bit. So I've got black already selected there, and I'm on my frame 1, so all I have to do is just fill that in with a click. Now I'm going to take that particular box and I'm going to duplicate it. So I go up to the layer palette, I right click on there, and down on this little thing it says duplicate layer, and I'm going to do that, and you see the layer comes up right above it. So now I'm clicking on that frame layer, and I'm going to do a little bit of a different color this time. So I'm going to go closer. I'm going to start with white. I double click on the little white tab, and I get the color picker coming up here. So what I want to do is I want to find a gray down here. So I'm going to click down in here. The gray that's working pretty well is a 224, and I'm going to see if I can get that right there. Then I'm going to click OK. Now I go back to the palette selection and see my grays on the bottom, so I click this little arrow between the two. Now my gray's on top. I make sure that my frame 1 copy's highlighted. I go to the bucket tool, which is selected, and then I just click over, and you can see that it turns that selection into now a gray layer. So if I go back over here and light these up and darken the other one, then you can see the black's the bottom layer, the gray's the top. But I'm going to do one other thing with this because I want to give a little effect just rather than having a flat 2D thing there. So now I'm going to, I've already got it selected, so I'm going up to filters, and I'm going to give it a little blur, and then I'm going to go down to Gaussian blur, and I'm just going to put a little bit. It comes up default at 5 and 5. I'm going to change this to 10 and 10, and this is going to give it a little bit of a 3D effect. So I'm going to click OK, and now you can see how that changed it all the way around and has a little bit of blur in there. So I go Control Shift A, it deselects it, and now you can see it much better. Now, one of the reasons why we made this very, very long is so sometimes our classes have long names. You can actually stretch this out if you want, or probably what we're going to have to do is move it to the left some. But anyway, we'll do that after we finish working on the other frame. So now we have frame 1 and frame 2. I'm going to go up there. That's looking really good to me, so I'm going to click on the frame 1 copy. I'm going to right click on it, and then I'm going to select merge down. Now my frame 1 is that copy there. Click on the move for a minute too, and then I'm going to click on the selection, and then I'm just going to move it to the left a little bit so that part of the bevel there is off the side and out of the picture. Okay, so from there I'm going to do the same thing with frame 2. I'm going to make frame 2 a little bit differently though. I'm going to go to the pin tool. As you can see, I've pulled down a couple guides from the top here, so I have a place for the pin tool to snap to. So I click on the pin tool and get access to that. I also, down here, you'll see a little menu from the tools that you click on. I want to click polygonal too, so that'll help me a little bit. Now you can see I can click on that line. I'm going to click out over here. I'm getting a little different look. I'm going to click here, here, and then here. So I finished the polygon. Now I want to take that and I want to click this little one down here, path to selection. Now I have a selection in a polygon shape for my frame 2. So I'm going to come back. I want to paint that black, so that's my color that's there. I'm going to click on the bucket tool, and I'm going to bucket that in with black. Now, just like I did with frame 1, I'm going to right click on frame 2. I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to click on that frame. I'm going to turn things to gray again, so I'm going to come down here to 24, got that. Click OK. It's the top frame, so it's alright. So now I'm going to go back to the bucket, bucket that with gray. Now remember, I want to bevel this also, so I'm going to go up to the filters, the blur, Gaussian blur, still at 5.0. I want to go back to 1 to 10 actually for both of these, horizontal and vertical. Click OK, and you can see that I have that going on. And I can go back to the move tool. I can come in here, I can click my guides and take them back. Then I'm going to come back to the frame 2 copy. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to merge it down with the layer below, so I have one solid graphic called frame 2. Finally, I want to lay the text on top of the graphics that I made there. So I'm going to go to the text tool here and click that, and you'll see in this little thing over here, it gives you the different fonts and sizes and things like that. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to need a little bit bigger size than what they have there. So I'm going to go and change this to 24. You can type in the sans and start to get different fonts showing up. I'm going to use Gotham Medium. That's what we've been using, and it's worked out pretty well. So I'm going to click in my frame 2, which is now on the top. The one thing that I also have to do too is I have to set the color. In the middle here, there's a little color thing. You double click on that. I want to use black type definitely. I think I'll get it all the way down the bottom. Everything will be 0. Click OK. Now you can see my text that's in there. Last but not least, I want to get the name of the course in there. I'm going to go up, select frame 1, go back, get my text tool, and I'm going to enter my text. Before I do that, I'm going to turn it to black this time right away. Once you have the text, these different handles here can help you move it around. Last but not least, now I need to shrink the little graphics to fit the length of the text. So I'm going to start on frame 1 here. Make sure I have my move tool there. Then I'm going to click on that particular graphic, and then I can click and then simply take my cursor keys to have it move in and shorten it down. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other frame. And there we have it. Now we can export it, last but not least. So I'm going to go, I'll switch back to the first layer. I'll hide the layer up above. Let's show it here so it fits in the screen now. And I'm going to export this. I'm going to File, Export As. and I need to set where I'm going to have it going. I'm going to leave it in the Spring Symposium, new BB banners. I want to change this to the week 1 banner. And I would probably want to put my course name there. And then I want to also be sure that I go down here on this little thing on the right. It says select file type by extension. And you'll notice up here it's default PNG, which is not what you want. You want it as a JPEG because they're fairly high resolution photos. You have to take the drop down, go down to the JPEG image, make sure up there that it's a JPEG image, and then hit export. And that's how you can make your own banners.